Hello, welcome to the Thane and Friends podcast. This is episode 6. I'm your host, Thane Taylor. As a guest today, we've got TAZ. You can find him on Twitter at TazManiac on the show. Hey, thanks for coming on. How you doing, man? Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you for coming on. This is it's a nice Saturday morning in Minnesota. What's new with you?
I'm just enjoying the day here in Michigan.
You're in Michigan?
Sun's been out like the past 9 days.
Okay.
So
yes,
I'm just enjoying it, man.
That's cool. So we connected on social for the past year or so, and one thing that caught my eye that you do, you're big into fitness, you're a super strong dude, but you also do this thing called armored combat. Tell me about that. What's that experience like?
So it combines the basic idea of any combat sport in the sense you gotta, beat whoever's across from you. I got brought into it by my buddy Drake, who had been doing it for about 6 months. And then one day she's like, hey, you want to get in some armor and fight some dudes? And I was like, hell yeah, man. Who wouldn't want to do that?
Okay.
But man, it's a lot of fun, and it's just a good way to get out some aggression.
So how often do you engage in that?
So I strayed away from it when I'm like meat prepping or getting ready for a meet, just because it's super taxing, physically and on the CNS. So I hadn't been doing it for like the past 3 months, but typically, since they're in Ohio and I'm in Michigan, I like to do it like twice a month on weekends. And then, when we have events, we'll make that. And then when the Ohio Renaissance Festival is going on, it's pretty much every weekend. So I'll be making that trip every weekend. Okay.
And then what are the weapons of choice for you?
Man, it's two. I like a Swedish halberd, which is like a long, basically like a 3 foot, 4 foot axe.
Okay.
With two ends. And then I also like just having two, smaller axes, like basically like two little hatchets.
Okay. So it's all offense for you. There's no shields or anything like that for you.
No, honestly, shields are probably a better weapon than they are defense. Because I've got punched with those punch shields, and I got rocked. I busted my lip the first time I was in armor. So those are like the Spartans used to use them as weapons. So it's definitely a weapon. But I'm just not. I don't think I've done it enough to be good at it. So I just stay away from the shields. I just like to have weapons.
Yeah, you know what? I think axes are kind of underrated because you can have that. There's like a little hook you can use it as an extended hand almost. It gives you a little grip.
Oh yeah,
yeah. So that's good. You ever work with maces or anything like that?
Yeah, I like maces. Maces are essentially like an axe. I just like. I don't know. I like the. I think it's just an aesthetic thing. Okay. I like a nice bearded axe with a big hook on the end, and just mentally, it makes me feel cooler. So I think I perform that.
That's awesome. So I make, concrete balls. I put random stuff in there, like chains and things like that. Is there anything that I could make myself that would work within that realm?
If you can make concrete balls, I feel like you can make anything, man. It's a lot of like woodwork and metal work. So, and when I was getting into it, I didn't know. I just started buying stuff online, and then I was like, they were like, oh, well, there's like regulations, and there's a whole federation that kind of looks over it, and I didn't know that. So I spent all this money on like cool weapons, like a Morning Star and a fat mace, and they're like, yeah, dude, you can't use that. I was like, oh, all right.
Oh, there are rules involved. Okay, nice.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. So it's called the IMF, the International Medieval Federation.
Okay.
And there's it's basically for safety. If you're out there with, a mace with like a 20-pound head on it, you're probably gonna kill somebody.
Yeah, that's a good point. You don't want to die.
No one wants to die, and it's like when I'm in the ring and the ref puts the stick up and says fight, I'm all go, but afterward, it's all love. I don't want to hurt anybody. We've had a couple injuries that happen, and I hate to see it.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I'm glad you touched base on that. I'm sure I'll be sending you pictures of, hey, what do you think this will do? But but that's pretty cool. Another thing you do, you're a strength coach, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then you like to get people to reach their potential, talk about what they're passionate in life. Touch base on that. What's your what's your process like when you see a new client that you know they want to achieve something better in their life, they just haven't figured out how to do that? How do you get them to fulfill themselves and reach their potential?
So I'm sure you saw on my Twitter. I haven't talked about it too much because a lot of it's still in the works, but you see the suicide strength at the top on my banner. So I came up with that because I realized when I first got into fitness, I was getting ready for the Navy. I was doing like the special warfare circuit and all that. So I kind of realized I had a lot of bad habits that were keeping me from achieving my potential. So when I sit down with a client, just from my personal experience, I like to identify, what's kind of keeping them from getting there right now before I can even map out a path. We got to eliminate that. So I came up with that when I was in college, and I wrote a paper about suicide as a form of homicide, your lesser self versus your better self. And then unfortunately, when the lesser self wins, it results in, a suicide. So I took that concept and I was like, well, what if the better self beats the lesser self, kills the lesser self, and, you're rid of that and you're free to, go as high as you want, really. So I do that first. So we identify whatever it is that's keeping them from getting there. A lot of times it's something just perception, perception's kind of reality to most people. So it's down, I work a lot. And I'm like, okay, well, and then we sit down, we start talking about time and days. I'm like, okay, well, you got, this hour and a half you spent doing this, and you just figure it out. You know what I mean?
Identify roadblocks to production or roadblocks to actually achieving the goals that they vocalize or verbalize, right? And
really they're just perceived, because a lot of times when you break it down for someone, they realize like, oh, okay, well, that's not even that hard at all. Or they just beat themselves up by thinking that way. And that's, again, like a form of lesser self, not to get too philosophical, but, that is a lesser self speaking, limiting yourself before you even get started.
So when you talk about killing your lesser self, do you find that people resent what they've gone through or what they've allowed themselves to become, or how does there's a balance between knowing that you could have done better your whole life and then allowing yourself grace to say, hey, I messed up earlier, but I'm not going to resent myself for that, and I'm going to do this moving forward so I don't revert back to what I was.
Yeah, exactly. That would be your lesser self speaking, resenting, your current self. So you got to kind of, you just got to put that behind you. You got to move forward. You always got to be moving forward. But yeah, you definitely, any kind of resentment that you have of where you're at, you got to eliminate that. That's just words. Words are powerful, and I don't think people really realize that.
Right. So is there a passion, is that your passion project, helping people do that? Or what's something that you're very passionate about that you're working on right now?
Yeah. Getting that up and going, with the help of some friends, because I'm not like a super computer literate guy. That I just love seeing people smash PRs, no matter how big or small, just seeing people achieve their true potential, especially, if they come from a background where they, weren't being their best self.
Right.
I love seeing that. Those are wins all around, no matter how big or small. I'll always celebrate those.
I like that. And I like what you mentioned about being able to bring friends in that are good at, your stated weaknesses. You said you're not a big tech guy and you've identified that as a bottleneck for you, putting this out into the world. I've had this idea for a podcast for a really long time, but editing was the thing that kept me from producing. So I got a thing that said, hey, I'm just going to get this thing that keeps it as simple as possible. And then that's going to make me, actually produce what I want to. So that's awesome.
Right.
I'm happy for you, man. Hey, we got 22 seconds. What's your greatest piece of life advice?
Find your why. Find your why. I always say that. Always find your why, because that's going to help you break barriers. It's going to help you go far. You just got to find what it is that gets you out of bed, gets you moving, and gets